It started with a joke that made an entire ballroom laugh, and ended with dozens of people wiping tears from their eyes. No one expected the quiet single father standing near the dessert table to become the center of the charity luncheon. No one expected one playful sentence to uncover years of hidden pain, silent sacrifices, and a love story neither of them believed they deserved anymore. When the exhausted father smiled and casually asked, "Who's the lucky man tonight?" the powerful CEO looked directly into his eyes, smiled through tears, and quietly replied, "Was hoping that would be you." In that breathtaking moment, every conversation stopped, every camera lowered, and every person in the room realized they had just witnessed something far greater than romance. They had witnessed hope finding two people who had almost given up on it. Before we begin this unforgettable journey, if you believe kindness can heal broken hearts, forgiveness can change lives, and second chances are worth fighting for, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community that believes love still exists in unexpected places. Graham Foster never imagined he would attend a luxury charity luncheon. Events like these belonged to people who drove expensive cars, wore tailored suits without wrinkles, and discussed vacations instead of overdue utility bills. Graham's life looked nothing like theirs. He was a 37-year-old mechanic who raised his 8-year-old daughter, Claire, alone after losing his wife to an aggressive illness 6 years earlier. Every morning began before sunrise, every afternoon was filled with grease-covered hands, school pickups, homework, laundry, and bedtime stories. He rarely complained because Claire never asked for anything beyond his love. She had inherited her mother's gentle heart and somehow made every difficult day feel worthwhile. The invitation arrived because Graham had quietly repaired the charity organization's delivery vans several times without charging them a single dollar. The director insisted that someone so generous deserved recognition during their annual fundraising luncheon. Graham tried refusing, saying someone else deserved the seat more than he did, but Claire begged him to go. She carefully ironed his only navy jacket, polished his worn shoes with surprising determination, and reminded him that heroes were allowed to attend nice events too. Walking into the elegant hotel ballroom during the bright afternoon felt like stepping into another world. Sunlight poured through enormous glass windows, reflecting against crystal decorations that sparkled like tiny stars. Conversations filled the room while volunteers welcomed guests with warm smiles. Graham immediately felt out of place. His jacket fit awkwardly, his shoes showed their age despite Claire's efforts, and he instinctively searched for the quietest corner available. Across the room stood Meredith Collins, the founder and CEO of one of the country's fastest-growing renewable energy companies. Newspapers described her as fearless, brilliant, and impossible to impress. They praised her business success but rarely mentioned the loneliness behind her polished smile. Years earlier she had ended an engagement after discovering her fiancé valued her fortune more than her heart. Since then, she devoted nearly every waking hour to her company and charitable foundation, convincing herself that work was easier than trusting someone again. Meredith had spent years attending events exactly like this one. Wealthy donors complimented her speeches, executives admired her leadership, and strangers constantly tried to gain something from knowing her. Yet that afternoon her attention drifted toward a man standing quietly beside the lemonade table, carefully folding a napkin after helping a little boy clean spilled juice from his shirt. Graham expected no applause. He simply noticed someone needed help and acted without hesitation. Later, while volunteers prepared the stage for the afternoon auction, Claire accidentally bumped into Meredith near a display of children's artwork. Instead of apologizing for herself, Claire apologized because she worried Meredith's dress might have been stained. Meredith smiled and knelt beside her, instantly recognizing the honesty that children carry before the world teaches them to hide it. Claire proudly explained that her father fixed cars, made the best grilled cheese sandwiches, and still packed her school lunches with little handwritten jokes inside every paper bag because he wanted her to smile during difficult days. Those simple words lingered in Meredith's heart long after Claire returned to her father's table. As lunch continued, guests participated in light-hearted games to encourage donations. One volunteer jokingly announced a raffle prize that included dinner with the CEO for the highest bidder. Laughter spread across the room. Graham, trying to make Claire giggle, smiled toward the stage and casually called out just loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, asking who the lucky man would be that evening. The words carried farther than he intended. Meredith looked directly at him. Without hesitation, without rehearsing the thought, and with more honesty than she had allowed herself in years, she smiled softly and answered that she had actually been hoping the lucky man would be him. The ballroom froze. Some guests laughed awkwardly, believing it was another joke. Others stared in complete disbelief. Graham himself looked over his shoulder, certain she must have meant someone standing behind him. Claire simply grinned because children often recognize sincerity before adults do. The silence eventually dissolved into applause, but whispers quickly replaced it. Several wealthy attendees questioned why someone as successful as Meredith would even notice a mechanic. Others quietly assumed Graham must have planned the entire interaction to gain attention. Graham heard enough to feel embarrassment rising inside him. He thanked the organizers, took Claire's hand, and quietly headed toward the exit before anyone could say anything worse. Meredith watched him leave. She knew that expression. It was the face of someone who had spent years believing he didn't belong anywhere special. Without caring about appearances, she excused herself from a conversation with investors and walked outside into the warm afternoon sunlight. Graham stood beside a flower garden helping Claire straighten the ribbon in her hair. He apologized before Meredith could even speak, insisting he never meant to create an awkward moment or embarrass her. She surprised him again. Instead of discussing the joke, she thanked him for reminding her that genuine people still existed. She admitted she had watched him all afternoon. She noticed how he spoke kindly to every server, thanked volunteers individually, helped strangers without expecting recognition, and treated his daughter with extraordinary patience. She confessed those qualities impressed her far more than expensive watches or business achievements ever could. Graham didn't know how to respond. No one had described him that way before. Life had trained him to measure success by whether the electricity stayed on and whether Claire smiled before bed. Over the following weeks Meredith found reasons to visit the neighborhood where Graham's repair shop stood. At first she claimed she wanted her company's service vehicles inspected locally. Soon she admitted she simply enjoyed talking with him. They shared coffee during lunch breaks while Claire completed homework at a nearby table. Meredith laughed more often than she had in years. Graham slowly stopped apologizing for every imperfect detail about his life. Still, happiness frightened him. People online noticed photographs of the CEO visiting a mechanic's garage. Gossip spread rapidly. Comment sections filled with cruel accusations suggesting Graham was chasing money while Meredith was experiencing a temporary emotional crisis. Reporters waited outside the repair shop hoping to capture dramatic photographs. Business analysts questioned Meredith's judgment. Graham's worst fear returned. He refused Meredith's invitations, believing walking away would protect her reputation. He convinced himself that love sometimes meant leaving before becoming someone else's burden. Weeks passed. Claire noticed the silence immediately. The little girl who once watched her father smile while checking his phone now found him staring quietly through the garage window during lunch breaks. Meredith buried herself in work again, but every accomplishment felt strangely empty. Then something unexpected happened. The charity organization announced that Graham had anonymously funded repairs for 27 struggling families over several years by secretly working unpaid weekends. Every time a single parent couldn't afford transportation to work or medical appointments, Graham quietly fixed their vehicles without ever revealing his name. The organization finally shared the truth after receiving permission from those families. The story spread across local news. Not because Graham loved publicity. Because dozens of grateful parents insisted people deserved to know what genuine kindness looked like. Reporters who once questioned his intentions now interviewed teachers, nurses, delivery drivers, and elderly neighbors whose lives he had quietly changed. Meredith watched every interview. Not one person mentioned his income. Every single person mentioned his heart. During another charity celebration held on a beautiful sunny afternoon several months later, Meredith stepped onto the stage before hundreds of guests. Instead of announcing another donation, she shared something much more personal. She admitted success had brought recognition but not peace. She admitted heartbreak had convinced her that trusting people was dangerous. Then she thanked one humble mechanic for teaching her that character shines brightest when nobody is watching. She walked through the audience until she reached Graham. He looked just as surprised as everyone else. Claire squeezed his hand with an enormous smile. Meredith didn't speak about wealth or business. She spoke about courage. She spoke about fathers who sacrifice quietly. She spoke about daughters who grow up believing kindness is strength because they watch it every day. Finally, with tears filling her eyes, she asked Graham whether he would stop worrying about what the world thought and simply allow two imperfect people to build an honest future together. For several emotional seconds he couldn't answer. He looked toward Claire. The little girl nodded before he even asked. Her expression carried all the encouragement he needed. Graham gently took Meredith's hands and admitted he had spent years believing his story ended with loss. He never expected another beginning. He promised he couldn't offer luxury yachts or private islands, but he could offer loyalty, laughter, burnt Sunday pancakes, honest conversations, and a family that would love her exactly as she was. The audience rose together in heartfelt applause. Not because a billionaire had chosen a mechanic. Because two wounded souls had finally chosen hope over fear. Before we reach the end of this journey, tell us in the comments, have you ever met someone whose kindness mattered more than their status or wealth? Your story might encourage someone reading these comments today who has almost given up believing good people still exist. Life after that afternoon wasn't magically perfect. Graham still repaired engines. Meredith still managed board meetings. Claire still forgot homework occasionally and laughed too loudly during family dinners. They faced criticism, difficult headlines, and ordinary disagreements like every family does. The difference was that none of them faced those struggles alone anymore. Graham eventually opened a training program for young mechanics from struggling families, funded quietly by Meredith but proudly led by him. Meredith discovered that the greatest investment she ever made wasn't another company, it was trusting someone whose greatest fortune had always been his heart. Years later, people remembered the famous charity luncheon differently than newspapers reported it. They didn't remember the expensive decorations or record-breaking donations. They remembered the moment a tired single father made an innocent joke, and a woman powerful enough to have anything she wanted chose the one thing money could never buy, a genuinely good man. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember, the world often measures people by their titles, their income, or their appearance, but the people who change lives are almost always the ones who quietly choose kindness when nobody is watching. Sometimes the greatest love story begins not with perfect timing or perfect circumstances, but with one unexpected moment of honesty that reminds two lonely hearts they are still worthy of being chosen.